For more than 2 decades, we've been educating our listeners about financial topics that are most important to you. Do you have enough money to retire? How will you keep from running out of money? What's your plan for managing market risk? What about taxes, inflation, and health care? Each week, we talk with an advisor at Lucia Capital Group about these issues and more. This is Managing Your Financial Future.
What do you say? Let's manage your financial future, huh? I'm all for it. You know why I'm all for it? Because I just heard the theme song playing, and that means as soon as the theme song is done, we're committed. We should be committed. We are committed. We got to go. Welcome to the show.
People have been saying we should be committed.
Yeah, I was waiting for that line. Johnny Dean, your podcast host. We got our podcast. I don't even want to call you a guest. You're not really the guest.
Permanent co-host.
Permanent co-host.
I don't know how to make that board work.
But you're also the Certified Financial Planner Professional, the CFPR circle around it. And you're the Accredited Wealth Management
Advisor. AWMA.
There you go. I knew it was AWMA. People who listen to these podcasts, like one episode right after the other, they can't believe that I can never say that right.
Or remember it.
But I do these a week apart, so you got to understand that I haven't thought about that. Welcome to the show. We appreciate everyone listening to us. And speaking of listening to us, I want to give a shout out, if I may, Professor Plum.
Okay.
Denise in Connecticut.
Yes.
I was told by Chris Lloyd. She works with Chris Lloyd. I was told that she's a regular listener, and as near as I can tell, she's been listening to. She's heard every podcast we've ever done.
She also she makes a note of the topics and comes in on the review with Chris to say, have you taken care of this in my plan?
Oh, good. Well, that keeps
and he says,
going.
Yes. Here's how we take care of it. Here's how we've addressed that. And
if it applies.
If it applies, yes.
Yes. He asked us to say hi. So I'm saying hi, Denise. That's all I know about you from Connecticut. But we do, as always, of course, we appreciate you being a regular listener to the show. I want to get into something. We haven't talked about this again for a long time, but it makes sense. Older topics start to come back now as times have changed. And I'm speaking more like interest rates are higher, so we have different options available to us. We've talked many times, Professor Plum, you have specifically, about how the basis of your financial plan has to do with really two things. The foundation would be Social Security and pensions. Now, why do we say that?
Well, those are income sources that are coming in that are presumably guaranteed by the government. That can't change, or the only change they're going to have is to potentially go up with cost of living. So they create the foundation of our spending needs. They create, a baseline, in some people even more than a baseline, but a baseline income that we're going to have, whether we've saved a dime or not, whether we invest well or not. We have certain amounts of income. Now, for most people, that's the foundation because it's not the whole picture. You need more still, but it is the better your foundation, the more income you have from those sources, the stronger your financial plan.
So naturally, you want to do as much as you can to I will say, potentially maximize your Social Security payments to the best of your ability. And we've covered Social Security many times. The pension side of it gets covered less. Number one, because not as many people have pensions, but it doesn't matter because people who do have pensions, they've got a big decision to make. And pension options, have you seen them if you've got pensions?
Well, and it depends on who you work for, whether it's a private sector or a public sector, what your pension, there's different formulas for figuring out what your pension is going to be. Yeah. But many times when they tell you, when you're looking forward to retirement and you're not asking for an exact thing, they'll tell you, oh, your pension is going to be this number. But that number is your life and your life only. And a pension will make a monthly paycheck to you for as long as you live. But if it's for your life and your life only, that's all it's going to provide for. And when you're gone, the pension's gone.
Yeah. Now, for people who are not married,
that's fine.
That's fine. But for
a
couples with
couple,
spouses,
and where that pension is a big piece of that foundation, where it's a necessary piece of the foundation.
Sure. In many cases, it is.
When you finally get the choice to say, okay, I'm going to retire, start sending me that X amount of dollars. Say, well, wait a minute, you're married. You can't have X because we have to provide for both of you. And while the odds of you dying in the next 20 years are X, the odds of both of you dying in the next 20 years are less than that. So we're going to have to probably continue this payment for a longer period of time. We're going to give you less money. So actuarially, it's the same amount based on the amount of time they expect to pay it. So because we're covering two lives now, we're going to be less. You're going to get less. Now, how much less? depends on how much of your pension you want to provide for your surviving spouse. You want to provide 50% of your pension to your surviving spouse, it's only a small drop for you in your lifetime. You want to provide all 100% of it to continue, it's a bigger drop.
Your check will be lower.
Your check will be lower.
Yeah.
And so we have to look into, okay, what option fits us the best?
I've seen these where there are 5, 6, 7 options.
Right. The most common are joint and survivor, what they call it. So it covers the two married couple, either at 50%, 75%, 100%. Some are at 66%, 65%, but there's some number usually between 50. There's usually almost always a 50 and then always 100% survivor benefit or a life-only benefit. Now, there's also what they call pop-up options. I see these more on the government side of pensions, where you take a reduction for your life, but if you're going to have a pension or continuation of your pension if you die first for your spouse. But if your spouse dies first, your pension goes back up to the full life-only number.
Yeah.
So you take a little less while you're both alive, and unfortunately, if your spouse dies first, then you go back to a single life. So there's all these different options, and how do you choose which one to get? And then there's the old famous, what if I want a lump sum?
Well, and that's the other option that appears. It's usually the last one on there. At least it is where my pensions are concerned. But that is true. You say, well, look, maybe you don't want monthly payments at all. When you're ready to take your pension, maybe we just hand you a huge pile of money.
And that huge or not huge pile of money is a derivative of what your life-only pension is. And it's based on interest rates. It's based on how much, basically it's saying, what pool of money do I need today to provide that payment ending in 0 at your normal life expectancy? And so they calculate, it goes backwards. It says, okay, the payment we know, the interest rates are going to be given to us by the federal government. So if you looked at your lump sum payout a couple of years ago, looking forward to retiring
when interest rates were lower,
when interest rates are very low, the amount of money required to make that monthly paycheck, that monthly pension check, was high. Now that interest rates have come up a little bit, the lump sum for the exact same time. So if I was looking to retire now at age 65, if I were 65,
the lump sum has gone down.
If I'd done a projection of it 3 years ago, based on retiring now, the lump sum may have been something like X plus, and now it's 70% of X, 85% of X, something less.
Yeah.
And it's not because they're trying to screw you over now that you're getting close to retirement. It's because the interest rates have changed. So when I'm looking and talking to people who have pension options, and their pension is one that actually has a lump sum potential option, I tell them, don't use the lump sum option in your retirement projections until you get to retirement. Use the monthly check, because that's the worst that it can be. If the lump sum turns out to be a better option at the time you retire, you can always easily pivot to that.
But you don't know
if it's better. But you don't plan
better
on the lump sum.
Yeah.
Because it could change between now and retirement, and unfortunately, it could go down.
But don't you need somebody to do the calculation to determine if the lump sum is better than the people?
Well, that too.
people, I think, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I think people sometimes look and say, well, look at this. They're going to give me either
me $1 million,
a monthly check for $4,000. I don't know, whatever the number is. Or they're going to give me, look at this, I got $800,000. I'm throwing these numbers out. I'm probably way off, but look at this, $800,000 immediately. And by the way, is that taxable when they give you the lump sum? Does this put you up in the?
Well, if you were to take the lump sum and not transfer it to an IRA, it would be taxable, and that would be a fairly significant bracket jump for most people. Yeah, but you can do it. Yes, you can. It is a qualified, for qualified pensions, which most of the ones we're out there talking about are. You can transfer the lump sum to an IRA. And then you're
pay tax as you
make the distribution from that IRA.
Is that a dangerous thing for people to take a lump sum because they're enticed by the large pile of money?
Depends on the person. There are some people who are very good, and the lump sum could potentially be a very good option for them. And there are some people where that lump sum is a disaster because they don't know how to handle money. They've lived on a set payment budget forever, and they live very well with that because they can't overspend. And then when they've got $1 million+ in their IRA that it's just begging to be spent, they just think that, oh man, this will never run out, and they forget about the taxes, and they're taking out big chunks, and they're jumping their tax brackets so higher, so they're paying more in taxes than they should be doing. So depending upon the individual, The first issue is to determine whether or not the lump sum is a viable option in the first place. Is it a financially feasible option? There are some pensions, specifically government pensions and teachers in some areas, where the lump sum is a horrible option. It's simply horrid. Unless you are terminal, single with nobody, it is a horrible option because it is based on only the money you've contributed over your working life and no money from the state or the district or the business.
Right.
And it's just the break even is about 8 years.
Yeah.
If you live more than 8 years, the monthly check was going to be much better for you,
especially on a joint and survivor type issue.
So much better. But it's a decent sized number, and people are like, wow, that looks really nice. And it's hard for some people to equate a lump sum of money today that looks like a large number and a monthly paycheck that is obviously not as large as the lump sum.
All right, so trying to determine whether you should take the lump sum or
the first step is financially figure out, is it even a viable option to consider the lump sum?
Let's say it is then.
Okay, now it's a matter of how does it fit into your life and how good and how disciplined of an investor, of a spender are you? And so now we bring the personality into it. Now we bring the emotions into it. What is it? Now I've seen people that take the lump sums because they've already got a lot of pension from their spouse, and that's going to continue. So maybe both individuals in the married couple have pensions. One of them takes the monthly paycheck, and then they get their Social Securities, and those three sources of income create a very nice foundation. And so they, instead of taking the monthly check from the other party, they take the lump sum because they want to have the ability to take more in the early years of retirement, and they're not as worried in the future. They've got their foundation set. Now they're looking for the play money. On the other hand, there are some people where they really should take the monthly check just because it does create the foundation.
You could take, so it takes some discipline. But if you take the lump sum, you have options, do you not, in many cases? I mean, with what you want to do.
You have lots of options.
You want to take more early. You could bucketize that portion.
And so understanding how it fits into your financial plan, how it fits into your specific strategy. I've run into people that say, I know that I'm going to inherit money. It won't be for another 10 years or so. Mom and dad are in their late 80s. They're doing fine, but they're not going to live forever.
Right. Okay.
And even with large medical bills, even with we're going to inherit multi-millions of dollars.
So all I got to do is make it for the next.
I just have to make it 10 years or so. And so I'd rather have the lump sum and spend it down. And
okay, well, that's some flexibility that you have.
Those are the things that we look at the personal side of it. Should you look at this now? But I do that after the financial side. Okay,
now for those who have determined that the lump sum really isn't a good option for them, for whatever reason, they would prefer to have the payments and not have to worry about it in case they live to be 98.
Right.
So for that person, they're looking at the other options and they say, okay, well, there's, as you said, there's life only.
I can take my life only. Let's say it's $5,000 a month, or maybe the joint 100% survivor is $4,500. I don't know the numbers; these are made up. But there is a discount when you do and maybe the joint 50% survivor is half the way through those, $4,750.
Right.
So I'd really like to have that $5,000 a month now instead of the $4,500. But I know what you're doing when you use a survivor option it's kind of like you're buying insurance. You're taking less of a pension to provide a benefit to somebody if you die. Now,
it's exactly what it is.
It's not a guaranteed benefit because there's no guarantee that the person that you're leaving for
will outlive you.
Will outlive you or live very long after you. So it's hard to quantify how much you're buying. You know what the premium is. It's the discount in your pension.
Yeah, let's throw this as a real life example for people who may not get it. You mentioned that's a pretty good pension, $5,000. Let's say you got a $5,000 a month pension for your life only. Like I get it, and it's good for as long as I live.
And if you live to be 150, they'll continue paying that. And if you died tomorrow, the payment, get nothing.
My spouse gets nothing. So I say, okay, well, I don't like that because I'd like my spouse to continue to get something.
Yeah, she needs it. I mean,
right. So let's say I take the 100%.
100% joint survivor. That's only $4,500 in my example.
Right, in your example. So I'll say, okay, so I'll take a lower amount. It's going to cost me $500 a month right now. I only get $4,500 a month instead of $5,000. That $500 a month is, I can look at that as paying.
You're paying for a benefit in the future to provide for your wife $4,500 a month for as long as she lives past your passing.
Correct. And so you look at that as a sort of insurance policy, even though it's not an actual insurance policy in the traditional sense.
Well, there's no actual death benefit because the death benefit is unknown. We don't know how long she's going to live or he's going to live after your passing.
Right.
We don't know if they're going to make it as long as you. So it's not a quantifiable number.
Well, how does somebody determine? And I know everybody's situation is different, so it really is more of an individual thing. But if you determine that you need
or would like
a certain amount of money, you've got the 100%, you've got the 50%. I mean, is there anything? What should people be thinking of? You know, even though you don't know their situation, what in general?
You know, what pension option? Because we're 10 years from retirement. We're starting to look into retirement and look at our planning. What option should we be looking at? Well, a lot of it has to do what other assets have you saved up? Have you saved up a lot of money in 457, 401k, IRAs and things? How much, if something happened to you
and that payment went away, how problematic will that be for the surviving spouse? In some cases, it's like, well, we still have plenty of other money. It would be nice. I'm healthy. I expect to live a long time, and it would be beneficial for the joint, for the two of us to have that higher number. And God forbid something happens, there's still enough money to provide for a very nice standard of living for the spouse going forward. That is not always the case. In fact, that's probably the minority of cases, but it does happen. And in that case, now you can choose whether or not you feel better about taking the joint survivor or the life only. But most people come back and say, no, this pension's a big part of our retirement needs and the survivor's needs. Remember, the pension may change or may not, depending upon which option you want. But assuming you both have Social Security, that will change when one of you dies. So there's going to be a reduction in income when one of you dies because of the Social
loss
Security
of the lower Social Security. How much, sometimes there's enough assets that maybe their pensions and Social Security are more than enough to live off of now. And so their IRAs and 401ks and their personal savings, they're growing that to be their survivor benefit. But if they don't have that, you've got to look at that survivor option. And in many cases, it's not a pleasant option necessarily. It's the only option.
You mentioned at the top here, we mentioned at the top that the Social Security and the pensions, assuming you have one here, provide the foundation, right?
Yes.
It is the base from which you can, and as long as you're alive, you know how much that's going to be. And it makes the planning a whole lot easier. When somebody dies, you already know that part of that foundation, the Social Security part, is going to go away.
Some of it, couple. When you both have
portion of it will. How much of it depends on how big the benefit was, but a portion of it will go away. But if you also know that another portion of it, meaning the potentially all of the pension, another big chunk of the foundation goes away. To me, that really can potentially present a problem to somebody who doesn't have a whole bunch of other money.
Right, and that's the key. Yeah. And that whole bunch or lack of whole bunch of other money is one of the driving factors in determining which pension option you have the luxury of taking. Sometimes you don't have the luxury of having the option of taking a life only. You can't afford it. Your spouse, either you or your spouse cannot afford to go through a survivor option without that pension, whether it's from your work or your spouse's work. It has to continue. There isn't enough assets to make that decision. So I will say the lack of ability, the lack of planning, the lack of savings, whatever it was up to that point has already made the decision for you. You have to take the joint survivor option.
Yeah.
But for other people, I was speaking with somebody last week, they have quite a lot of pension and Social Security. I mean, over $15,000 a month in pension and Social Security. Now his pension, which is the larger of the two, will drop to 60% of what they're receiving now if he dies first. And so they're going to miss out on $30,000, $40,000 of income. And the lower of the two Social Security is going to drop off. So right now they need nothing from their portfolio. And they're actually saving some money because their pensions are so nice.
Yeah.
But if something happens to, in this case specifically, the gentleman, her income is going to go down by $50,000. And now she might want to have that portfolio. The good news is they have the portfolio, at least some amount of portfolio, to provide for that. But it's not going to be the same standard of living that she has now. but they selected that 60% knowing that these numbers would be okay for her in the future.
So the biggest thing that when you're making this determination of which option you should take is, as you said a little bit ago, is very smart. It is how big of a hit is it going to give you if this, one of your
money disappears,
one of your Social Security is going to go away. But if this income also went away, how big of a hit would that take?
And in many cases, it can be a devastating hit that cannot be made up with other things.
Now, let's talk for just a second here about, do you ever run into people who have pensions and Social Security, but they don't have a lot of, they have other money maybe, but it's just not.
Well, it's not the millions.
It's not providing a ton. So that if and when one of those drop off, would be very hard for them. But who also say, look, I love this much higher life-only number. In fact, that extra $500 a month.
In my hypothetical example,
that extra $500 a month would actually kind of make a difference to us. Is there a way, he asked in his best leading question voice, is there a way to potentially take that higher life-only number and still continue an income for the surviving spouse should that pension holder die before?
Well, it's probably not as good as you want me to say it is, but there are potentially some options, and these types of options are better suited selecting them 10 years before retirement. Mm-hmm. It's much easier to do what you're considering. We talked about the fact that $500 a month in our hypothetical example is kind of like buying insurance. I'm taking less money each month. I'm taking less money out of my budget every month.
In your example, $500 a month
to provide for a benefit for my spouse when I die. Well, that can sound a lot like insurance. And so sometimes people will take a look at it and say, you know what? I know that this is coming up. It's harder to do at retirement where I'm 65 and I'm saying, okay, what happens if I die the first year in retirement and my wife or my spouse misses out on $4,500 a month for the rest of their life? What is that worth, assuming that person lives, 20 years, at $4,500 a month? What I can calculate that based on certain assumptions to say, well, that's $1 million of insurance. I don't know. I didn't do the calculation in my head quick enough. Sorry. I need $750,000 worth of coverage. Can I buy $750,000 worth of coverage for $6,000 a year?
In other words, can you buy an actual life insurance
policy? Assuming the numbers work out where I can buy the appropriate amount of coverage for a similar amount as the reduction in my pension, the life insurance has an advantage in that if my spouse doesn't survive me, I can either keep the insurance to give to my kids, or I can stop paying the $500 a month or for whatever the number was, and
end the policy.
Basically continue with my life-only option. If my spouse only survives me by 3 or 4 or 5 years, there's money left over, hopefully, for the heirs. So
the insurance money.
If we're killed in a car accident together and there's no survivor benefit paid, that death benefit's still going to be paid. So there are advantages to the life insurance option. The disadvantage is we can't do an apples to apples $500. So I say my pension went down by $500 a month, and I'm going to make a $500 a month premium payment. Even though that sounds apples to apples, it's not, because of something you alluded to earlier. Mm-hmm. That $500 a month in my pension that I'm getting now, I'm getting the $500 instead of the $4,500. I have to pay taxes on that.
Yeah.
And so I may only have $400, left over after taxes to pay the premium. And during my joint life, it didn't give me that $500 to spend during my life, because I'm spending it to protect one way or the other. I'm spending that $500-ish in my example to protect my wife, in this case, my spouse.
Yes.
So it didn't give me that extra money that I wanted.
For those listening and are maybe thinking, I'm not having trouble following. This is the strategy, if you want to look it up. What I'm referring to is called pension maximization.
And it can work. And it works much better, though, if you are planning ahead of time.
Maybe 10 years ahead of time.
10 years ahead of time, where you can maybe, super fund during your high working years a policy that then you don't have to make as big of a premium or any premium after that going forward, where now I can keep the full $500 a month when it's more important to me, where my spouse is covered. If I die, the death benefit pays off.
And you can qualify for it.
And you're more likely to be able to qualify for it because you're 10 years younger in this example. And that is a key, because a lot of times when we get to 65, the life insurance is not an option anymore.
Yeah.
We have, it's amazing how as we get older, we develop little health issues, and they're not major necessarily, but they start adding up, and they start making insurance more expensive.
Well,
that's just the way it is. But it works. Now, the bottom line to every one of the options and things we've talked about today is, how does it fit into your plan? You need to be planning for these issues. You need to be looking at it and understanding it before you get to retirement, and you need to be able to, give yourself some time to supplement those options with your 457, 401k, IRA, personal savings, and other things. And then, how do I invest those assets over and above my Social Security? And how do I invest those assets to create the income that I need to supplement the foundation?
I can't imagine trying to do that on my own.
That's the fun part.
Well, because you do it.
Yeah.
But I mean, just trying to do this. These are important decisions that you're arriving at here.
Right, but it just takes a little thought and say, okay, you can get a Social Security projection. I will tell you, it's probably going to be wrong, and depending upon the factors that are.
You
going
mean when
place,
you go to My Social Security?
Right.
It's going to be wrong in what way? Like too low or too high?
Depends. Are you going to work until that date?
Yeah. Okay.
Then it's probably a slightly low. If you plan on retiring and deferring to that date, so they show you your age 70 benefit at a gazillion dollars a month, but you want to retire at 58. Well, that number won't be as high as what they're showing, because you won't have the continuation of earnings to age 70. They assume you keep working until that age.
Well, unless you tell them,
unless you go through the supplemental and run it the different way. So if you go through and actually run it and say no more earnings after age 58 in this example,
right?
Then I think it's going to be slightly low. I'd rather plan on slightly low than overproject. Pension options, they're based on your salary. So if I'm planning today, and I'm making $100,000 a year, and I'm saying my pension is based on a percentage of my income at retirement, high 5, high 3, best 1 year average, you kind of have to know a little bit about how your pension works. Mm-hmm. I have a pension from way back when I was in my 20s.
You and me both.
My teens and my 20s.
Right.
And it is a flat dollar amount per year of service I have. And there's no COLAs on it. And so
you're not going back to work at that grocery store. Right?
No, I don't think so. Well, for one thing, that grocery store doesn't exist.
I think they're gone now. Yeah.
That one's been gobbled up.
Gobbled up several times.
But it's a matter of know what your pension is. But even if I'm making $100,000 a day, and maybe it's a 60% of my income at that time based on years of service. Well, what's my income going to be 10 years from now? And so if I use it today, I'm going to get a pension of $5,000 a month based on that calculation. But maybe 10 years from now, I'm making $140 or $150. So it's a bigger number, hopefully.
And you don't know that.
But we have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And guess what? If I think I need to spend $6,000 a month today, I'm probably going to need to spend more 10 years from now than I am now.
Well, and keep in mind when you look at your Social Security benefit too, that doesn't include the Medicare premium you're going to have to pay.
Oh, out of the benefit.
Right. And who knows what that's going to be. If you're retiring 10 years from now, I mean, I don't know where it's going to be, but it's going to be something.
It's going to be higher than it is today.
It's going to be higher than it is today. So plan on that chunk. So when you do that, do you do a lot of these things for people? Do you do a lot of these pension calculations?
We look at those numbers, and we look at how the pension is calculated. Because a lot of times, especially government pensions, local firefighter, police, teachers, and things, their percentage of your salary times the number of years of service you have.
Yeah.
But that percentage is based on the age that you start receiving the pension, and it changes every year. So it may be 2.5% at 55, and then 2.6%, it all depends. So we have to look at all these factors, but it's. Once you get the factors in place, once you know what's going on, then it's very easy to work with those numbers. So they can come in
and they can say, Professor Plum, here's what I'm going to get at age 60. Here's what I'm going to get at age 65.
We see that often. And even in the private sector, you can contact your human resources and pension department and say, what is my pension projected to be at age 60? I'm 57 now. What is it going to be at 60? If I keep working, what's it going to be at 63?
If I stop working.
That's the farthest I'm going to work.
Yeah, right.
And so we can get an idea of how much of an increase it's going to be. Sometimes they ramp up fairly quickly from 60 to 65 or from an early age to a later age. Sometimes they don't ramp up very much at all. And so that may be a factor in I'm looking for a reason to get the heck out of here, and continuing just for my pension is either a good thing or not such a good thing.
These are part of the calculations that you do, and you've done enough of these, I think, where you know what to look for and
I've done a few
what
over
percent.
40 years.
Yeah, more than a few. These are hard things to do on your own, and I would suggest you call Lucia Capital Group advisor like Rick Plum or any of the advisors, because they can all do the same thing. Talk to them about this and say, look, I've got a pension. This is part of the foundation. I really don't want to mess this up. Can you run these calculations for me?
And on top of that, how much should I have saved by that point? Yeah. How do I get to where I want to go? This is the foundation that we're laying. What else do I have to finish this financial building?
Right.
I want it to be strong. I want it to last. I don't want a hurricane to take it down or an earthquake. How much more do I need to save? And we'll see if I can get there.
And you say, all right, Professor Plum, ask me the questions you need to know. I'll supply that. Then you go off and you have fun and you work those numbers for me. You call me. I'll come back in and you tell me exactly what the.
We could probably do it, in a
you can do it
cursory manage right there.
Okay, well there you go. There it is. Do those, and I'll be right here. You tell me. This is a part of somebody's bucket strategy too. Right?
Well, the bucket strategy is on top of the foundation.
Right. You build the foundation.
Yes. You build the foundation, and we'll tell you how to structure the rest of the building to create that income stream that you want.
And you will devise it in case part of the foundation goes away or is lower.
Well, and some people are worried, and people are saying, you've been talking about pensions being guaranteed, but what if the company, what if this? Well, if you're a private, if you work for a private company and you have a pension from a private company, those pensions, qualified pensions, are covered by something called the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corp. And so unless you have a pension of $10,000 a month or more, I think it's in the $6,000 a month now at age 65, it's covered. It's guaranteed.
Yeah.
And you say, well, what about the pilots? Well, there was a different issue. They had much higher pensions.
Airline pilots
and they were forced to retire early. Right. So they did get, I'll say it, they got screwed. But most normal people out here, when they have a pension, their pensions are covered. And even if the company, this isn't Enron. This isn't the old days where when the pension went away, you got nothing or the company went away, you got nothing. And then they'll say, well, what about the public sector pensions where we hear about the city or the state being
defaulting,
way underfunded?
Yeah, right.
They're so far underfunded.
What do you do then?
Well, you pray. The states they're funded and guaranteed by the state. And so hopefully the state will live up to it. I don't see them defaulting.
I haven't seen it yet. Have you ever seen that happen? I haven't seen it.
No.
Even when Orange County years and years ago went...
Orange County went bankrupt
California.
in 1994.
Yeah. I don't know that pensions were affected. I could be wrong. But it's a very rare occurrence. So it's part of your bucket strategy. This is what you do. And I want to remind you, too, we've got the Bucket Strategy Guide, free to download. This has gone gangbusters. Go to luciacap.com. In the search bar, type in bucket strategy. It'll be the first thing that comes up on your search results. Download your free guide. Read about the bucket strategy. I think, I don't know if pensions are covered in this particular thing or not, but it gives you the structure of how a bucket strategy is put together.
Yeah, this talks about how the bucket strategy fits after you formed your foundation.
Right. And so this is all part of it. So understanding how the bucket strategy works can be a really big help, especially when you're going in and meet with somebody.
Yeah. Unless your pensions and Social Security are way more than what you need to spend in retirement, you need a bucket strategy.
Plain and simple.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
Very straightforward.
Give them a call here at Lucia Capital Group, 800-644-1150, 800-644-1150. You could talk to Professor Plum or any of the Lucia Capital Group advisors. They're all working together as a team. Talk to them and get your bucket strategy in order. Find out about your pensions. Find out, hey, do I have the right pension option? Do I need to do something now? It's never too late. Well, I shouldn't say that, but you can work with them. I mean, the sooner the better. Let's just put it that way. I don't want to say it's never too late, but in some cases that may be true. Go to luciacap.com. As I said, you can download the Bucket Strategy Guide, also find more videos, blog posts. Go to Spotify and Apple Podcasts to download this particular podcast every single week to your device. It's managing your financial future. Hey, Professor Plum, as always, I really appreciate it. I think you got to go talk in front of a bunch of people right now. I know you're
or
a little late.
Or at least listen.
Well, we've got a lot more, and I may have another advisor on next week's show. I'm working
give me
on
a break. Huh?
I'm working on. No, you'll be here.
Oh, I'll be here too. Okay.
Yeah. No, you're required, but I'm working on that. We'll tell you next time you join us. All right. Thanks very much for Professor Rick Plum. I'm your podcast host, Johnny Dean. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again next week.
The information provided should not be considered specific tax, legal, or investment advice and is not specific to any individual's personal circumstance. Different types of investments and/or investment strategies involve varying levels of risk, and there can be no assurance that any specific investment or investment strategy will be profitable for a client's or prospective client's portfolio. Thus, investments may result in a loss of principal. You should always seek counsel of the appropriate advisor prior to making any investment decision. All investments are subject to risk, including the loss of principal. This material was gathered from sources believed to be reliable. However, its accuracy cannot be guaranteed. Examples cited are hypothetical, are for illustrative purposes only, are not guaranteed, and subject to potential federal and state law amendments. There is no guarantee that you will achieve the results discussed or illustrated. IRA withdrawals will be taxed at ordinary income rates. Withdrawals prior to age 59.5 may also be subject to a 10% penalty tax. 401k plan information used is obtained from sources believed to be reliable as of the current date, but no representation is made as to its accuracy and completeness. Benefits may be subject to change at your employer's, the governing pensions, or benefit organization's discretion. The information provided is based on current laws, which are subject to change at any time. Lucia Capital Group is not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any government agency. Social Security rules can be complex. For more information about Social Security benefits, visit the SSA website at ssa.gov or call 800-772-1213 to speak with an SSA representative. Insurance services offered through LPL Financial or its licensed affiliates. California Insurance License Number 0518721. Rick Plum and Chris Lloyd are registered representatives with, and securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor and member FINRA SIPC. The investment professionals are affiliated with LPL Financial and are conducting business using the name Lucia Capital Group, a separate entity from LPL Financial.